They called him just another mall cop, watching teenagers and checking receipts, until an off-duty police officer noticed the way he moved and realized the security guard scanning the food court had once hunted the most dangerous men on earth. Welcome to Stories of Secret Heroes. Before we begin this powerful story of hidden service and quiet recognition, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who never asked to be remembered. Westfield Shopping Center sat on the outskirts of Phoenix, a sprawling complex of chain stores and fluorescent lights that had seen better decades. The food court smelled of grease and cleaning solution. The tile floors bore the scuff marks of a million shoppers, and the background noise was a constant hum of conversations, crying children, and the distant echo of pop music from the clothing stores. It was the kind of place where nothing exciting ever happened, where security meant checking receipts and asking teenagers to keep it down. Robert Chen had worked mall security for 3 years, 8 months and 16 days. Not that anyone was counting. He wore the standard uniform every shift, navy blue polo shirt with security embroidered across the chest, black cargo pants that had faded to charcoal, and comfortable walking shoes that had logged thousands of miles across polished floors. His radio crackled softly on his shoulder, his badge hung from a retractable cord, and he carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who understood that most problems could be solved with patience and respect. The job wasn't glamorous. Most of his time was spent walking circuits through the mall, checking doors after closing, and dealing with minor disputes between customers and store employees. He handled shoplifting cases with firm professionalism, mediated arguments over parking spaces with diplomatic calm, and helped lost children find their parents with gentle efficiency. The pay was modest, the hours long, but Robert never complained. He showed up on time, did his job well, and went home to his small apartment without making waves. To most people, he was invisible. Shoppers walked past him without a second glance, store employees greeted him with polite nods, and teenagers tested his patience with the casual disrespect reserved for authority figures they didn't take seriously. They saw the uniform, not the man wearing it. They saw a job title, not a person with a history that ran deeper than the shallow waters of retail security. Robert preferred it that way. Invisibility had always been his greatest strength, and anonymity was a skill he had learned to value long before he ever set foot in a shopping mall. He moved through his shifts with the quiet competence of someone who had learned to observe everything while appearing to notice nothing, to be present without being seen, to control situations without anyone realizing control was being exercised. His station was positioned strategically near the food court, where he could monitor the highest traffic area while maintaining visual contact with most of the mall's main corridors. He sat behind a small desk equipped with monitors showing feeds from dozens of security cameras, a computer terminal for filing reports, and a drawer containing incident forms he rarely needed to use. The work was routine, predictable, and exactly the kind of peaceful existence he had been looking for when he hung up his old uniform for the last time. That Thursday afternoon started like any other. The mall was moderately busy with the usual mix of retirees exercising their way through the corridors, parents pushing strollers between errands, and high school students killing time before evening jobs. Robert made his rounds every hour, checking in with store managers, monitoring the parking garage, and maintaining the low-profile presence that kept minor problems from becoming major incidents. At 2:30 p.m., a disturbance broke out near the electronics store. 2 customers were arguing loudly about a return policy, their voices carrying across the concourse and drawing stares from passing shoppers. The store manager looked overwhelmed, gesturing helplessly as the situation escalated beyond normal customer service protocols. Robert received the call on his radio and responded with his usual calm efficiency. "Security to Electronics Plus, please," came the crackling voice of Maria, the store manager who had been dealing with difficult customers all week. Robert rose from his desk, adjusted his radio, and walked toward the disturbance with measured steps. He didn't hurry, didn't show urgency or alarm. Years of experience had taught him that most situations de-escalated naturally when approached with confidence and patience rather than aggression and rush. What he didn't notice was that he was being watched. Detective Martinez was off duty, shopping for a birthday gift for his daughter, when he heard the raised voices. As a 15-year veteran of the Phoenix Police Department, he had developed an automatic response to conflict, even in civilian settings. His attention turned toward the electronics store, where he could see a crowd beginning to gather around what appeared to be a heated exchange between customers and staff. Martinez had noticed the security guard before, had seen him making rounds during previous shopping trips, but had never paid much attention. Just another mall cop, he had assumed. Someone hired to deter shoplifters and handle minor complaints. But as he watched the security guard approach the disturbance, something caught his eye that made him pause. The way the man moved was wrong. Not wrong in a concerning way, but wrong for someone whose most dangerous encounter should involve rowdy teenagers or petty theft. The security guard's posture was too controlled, his positioning too tactical, his awareness too comprehensive. He didn't walk toward the problem like someone hoping to avoid confrontation. He moved like someone who had been trained to manage threats at a level far beyond retail security. Martinez found himself studying the guard more closely as the man approached the arguing customers. There was something about his gait, something about the way he kept his hands visible but ready, something about how he positioned himself to maintain visual contact with all potential exits while never turning his back to the crowd. These were not the movements of someone whose training came from a security company handbook. The guard reached the disturbance and immediately took control of the situation with a voice that carried natural authority without aggression. He didn't raise his tone, didn't make threats, didn't invoke moral policy or consequences. He simply spoke to the angry customers with the kind of calm confidence that made people want to listen, the kind of presence that diffused tension through competence rather than intimidation. "Gentlemen," Robert said, positioning himself where he could see both customers while maintaining a clear line of sight to the rest of the area. "I understand you're frustrated with the return policy. Let's see if we can find a solution that works for everyone." Martinez watched the interaction unfold with growing curiosity. The security guard's positioning was textbook tactical, creating safe zones, controlling sight lines, managing crowd dynamics, but executed so smoothly that most people wouldn't recognize it as anything more than good customer service. This wasn't someone who had learned conflict resolution from a corporate training video. This was someone who had been taught to control hostile situations in environments where mistakes meant casualties. Within 5 minutes, the dispute was resolved. The customers were satisfied, the store manager was relieved, and the crowd had dispersed. The security guard completed his report with efficient professionalism and was preparing to return to his station when fate intervened in the form of a wallet that had seen too many years of use. As Robert turned to walk away, his wallet, worn thin from years of carrying and weakened by countless trips through airport security and another life, finally gave up. The leather binding split along a seam that had been stressed beyond its limits, and the contents scattered across the polished floor of the electronics store. Credit cards, driver's license, membership cards and receipts spread in a small radius around his feet. Robert immediately knelt to gather his belongings, moving with the quick efficiency of someone who had learned to secure personal items under pressure. But as he collected the scattered contents, one item landed just outside his reach, sliding under a display case where he couldn't immediately retrieve it. Martinez, who had been watching the entire interaction from 20 feet away, moved forward instinctively to help. "Let me get that for you," he said, kneeling down and reaching under the display case to retrieve what appeared to be a small identification card. As he pulled the item from under the case and handed it back to the security guard, Martinez caught a glimpse of what he was holding. It wasn't a credit card or membership card. It was a badge, a very specific badge that made his blood run cold and his understanding of the situation shift completely. The badge was small, unremarkable to anyone who didn't know what to look for. Black metal with subtle engravings, worn smooth by years of handling, with markings that meant nothing to civilians and everything to people who understood how special operations worked. It bore the insignia of Delta Force, the Army's most elite counter-terrorism unit, the operators who handled missions so classified that their existence was barely acknowledged by official channels. Martinez looked up from the badge to the security guard's face and saw something that hadn't been there moments before. Recognition. Not fear, not embarrassment, but the quiet acknowledgement of someone who had just been seen after years of being invisible. "Sergeant First Class Robert Chen," Martinez said quietly, reading the name etched into the metal. "Delta Force, Operational Detachment Alpha." Robert accepted the badge with steady hands and slipped it back into his wallet without comment. For a moment, the two men stood in silence while shoppers continued their errands around them, oblivious to the fact that they were witnessing the intersection of two very different worlds. "Thank you," Robert said simply, his voice carrying the same calm professionalism he had used to diffuse the customer dispute moments earlier. Martinez studied him more carefully now, seeing details that had been invisible before. The slight scarring around Robert's hands that spoke of rope work and weapons handling, the way he carried himself with unconscious precision. The fact that his eyes never stopped moving, constantly scanning for threats that didn't exist in shopping malls, but had been very real in other places, other times. "Detective Luis Martinez, Phoenix PD," Martinez said, extending his hand. 15 years on the force, but I've never met someone from your unit." Robert shook his hand with a grip that confirmed everything Martinez was beginning to understand. "Most people haven't," he said. That was the point. They walked together toward Robert's security station, their conversation taking place in the low tones of professionals who understood the weight of certain subjects. Around them, the mall continued its normal rhythm. Families shopping, teenagers socializing, elderly couples taking their exercise walks. But for these two men, the environment had shifted into something more significant. "How long have you been working here?" Martinez asked as they reached the security desk. "Almost 4 years," Robert replied, settling back into his chair and adjusting the monitors that showed feeds from throughout the mall. Since I retired from active duty. Martinez looked around the food court, taking in the ordinary scene with new appreciation for the man who watched over it. This must be quite a change from your previous work. Robert allowed himself a small smile. Different kind of protecting, he said. But the mission is the same. Keep people safe, solve problems quietly, make sure everyone goes home at the end of the day. For the next 20 minutes, they talked in the careful way that professionals from high-stakes careers talk when they recognize kindred spirits. Robert didn't share details about classified operations, and Martinez didn't press for information that wasn't his to know. But they found common ground in their understanding of what it meant to serve, to take responsibility for other people's safety, to carry the weight of decisions that most people never had to make. Martinez learned that Robert had served 3 tours in Afghanistan and 2 in Iraq, participating in operations that targeted high-value individuals and rescued hostages from situations where conventional forces couldn't operate. He had been decorated multiple times for actions that would never be publicly acknowledged, had saved lives that would never know his name, and had retired quietly when his unit rotation cycle came to an end. Robert learned that Martinez was a detective specializing in organized crime, that he had worked undercover operations targeting drug trafficking and human smuggling, and that he understood the challenge of transitioning from high-intensity operations to civilian life. They shared the bond of men who had seen humanity at its worst and chosen to dedicate their lives to protecting humanity at its best. As their conversation wound down, Martinez pulled out his business card and wrote something on the back. "If you ever want to talk," he said, handing it to Robert, "or if you ever consider coming back to law enforcement, give me a call. The department could use someone with your background." Robert looked at the card, then at Martinez. "I appreciate that," he said, "but this is where I need to be right now. These people, this place, they deserve protection too. Maybe not from the same threats, but protection nonetheless." Martinez nodded, understanding completely. Different battlefield, same mission. Exactly. After Martinez left, Robert returned to his routine with the same quiet professionalism he had always maintained. But something had changed in the exchange. For the first time in almost 4 years, someone had seen past the uniform to the person wearing it. Someone had recognized the depth of experience and dedication that he brought to a job that most people considered insignificant. Over the following weeks, Martinez made a point of stopping by when he was in the mall, sometimes for legitimate shopping, sometimes just to check in. Their friendship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and shared understanding. Robert never talked about his classified service, and Martinez never pushed for details, but they found value in their conversations about leadership, responsibility, and the challenge of protecting people who never realized they needed protection. One evening after the mall had closed and Robert was completing his final security sweep, he received a text message from Martinez. "Saw the news about the terrorist plot that was stopped in Phoenix last month. Made me think about the people who do that work. Thanks for your service. All of it." Robert looked at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Thanks for seeing what most people miss. It matters more than you know." 6 months later, when a situation arose in the mall that required real tactical expertise, a domestic dispute that escalated into a hostage situation, Robert handled it with the calm precision that had once saved lives in Afghanistan. The incident was resolved without casualties, the perpetrator was taken into custody safely, and the hostages were unharmed. The local news covered it as a story about quick-thinking mall security, never knowing they were reporting on the actions of one of America's most elite warriors. Martinez, who responded to the scene as part of the police tactical team, watched Robert give his statement with the same understated professionalism that characterized everything he did. No grandstanding, no seeking credit, no mention of his specialized training, just a security guard who happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right skills. After the interviews were complete and the mall was secured, Martinez approached Robert one more time. "You know," he said, "most people are going to think you just got lucky today." Robert adjusted his radio and prepared to resume his normal duties. "That's fine," he said. "Lucky is better than famous." Martinez watched him walk away, back to his station, back to his routine of protecting shoppers and maintaining order in a place where the greatest dangers were usually no worse than shoplifting and food court arguments. But now he knew the truth that Robert carried quietly, that some warriors never stop serving, they just change uniforms. The mall returned to its normal rhythm. Shoppers came and went, stores opened and closed, teenagers tested boundaries and families made memories. And through it all, Robert Chen continued his watch, invisible to most, misunderstood by many, but recognized by one police detective who understood that heroism isn't always about medals and recognition. Sometimes it's about the quiet dedication of someone who chooses to keep serving, even when the only reward is the knowledge that people are safe. Sometimes the most elite warriors are the ones who disappear into ordinary jobs and continue their mission in ways that no one notices. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, someone looks close enough to see the truth beneath the surface and recognizes the difference between someone who wears a uniform and someone who embodies the values that uniform represents. So I ask you, have you ever met someone like Robert? Someone whose current job seemed too simple for their capabilities, whose presence felt different even when you couldn't explain why. Have you encountered hidden heroes who traded recognition for the quiet satisfaction of continuing to serve? Share their stories in the comments. Tell us about the security guards, the janitors, the clerks who seem to carry themselves with unexplained authority. Because here at Stories of Secret Heroes, we believe that the most powerful warriors don't always stand in the spotlight. Sometimes they stand in shopping malls, making sure that ordinary people can live their ordinary lives in safety. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it. Help us honor those who chose invisibility over glory, service over recognition, and the next time you see a security guard, a maintenance worker, or anyone whose job seems routine, look a little closer. You might be in the presence of someone who once stood between civilization and chaos, who now stands between you and smaller dangers with the same unwavering dedication. Remember, the most elite warriors are often the ones you never notice until the moment you need them most.